Mama, and welcome to the Real Talk Round Table. Now, permanent contraception involves making a person permanently incapable of reproduction. In Western countries, these methods are highly popular and have gained quite a significant traction. But here in Africa and Kenya, slowly but surely, we are seeing more and more acceptance of these methods. Now, my guests on the show have chosen to have different permanent contraception methods done, vasectomy, tubal ligations, and they'll be sharing with us what that experience has been like on today's episode. Welcome to the show.
I was looking at the options of family planning and I didn't like the side effects, the weight gain, the hormone imbalance, and I wanted something that is not going to affect my body.
I just want to give you a rough idea about what we call uptake. That is the percentage of Kenyan women who actually partake of contraception. And the partake, or the uptake as we call it, is rather average, because it's about 54%. In other countries, it's a lot higher. It can go even up to 90 something percent.
Having our third born and basically our last born, Baraka, we sat down with the doctor and basically he shared with us, he was like, okay, if you guys feel that this is, that this is the last baby, these are the options that you have available. And so the options available for my wife were quite a number.
Right.
No
one was addressing you.
No one was addressing me, you get. So
you were a spectator in that conversation.
In that conversation, yeah. All I could do was maybe just have the conversation, be like, okay.
So what does this mean for her?
Yes. For me, there were only like two options.
And the assumption was that she would be the one who would have to take one for the team.
Yes.
Hello, welcome to the round table. Now, today we are focusing on permanent contraceptive methods, and I just want to put a disclaimer that this show is purely for educational purposes, and as always, the views represented on this show by my guests do not necessarily represent our views as a show, and of course, you who's watching at home, you're welcome to make your own personal choice on this topic, because we just want to highlight and create more awareness and education around this topic. So my first guest is Jen Wairimo. Jen is currently a mother of two, and she made the personal choice to actually have a permanent contraception method. Welcome to the show, Jen.
Thank you.
So, you're a mother of two?
Yes.
6 years and 1 year.
One. She just turned one.
And I've just met your 1 year old, and she has such personality.
She's a handful.
Okay, so maybe tell me about why did you opt to go for a permanent contraception method?
I decided my pregnancy was really hard in the beginning, so I was looking at the options of family planning and I didn't like the side effects, the weight gain, the hormone imbalance, and I wanted something that is not going to affect my body.
So this is now with your second pregnancy?
My second pregnancy.
Maybe take me a little bit back. How old are you, Jenny?
I'm 33.
You're 33 years
Yes.
old and now a mother of two.
Yes.
So as a woman, what has been your experience with contraceptives?
It's the side effects that were bugging.
So you've used contraceptives before?
Yes, like the pills, I'm not good at reminding myself to take them every other day. And the injections, I was like, I'm not doing that. So I decided I'm going to look for something that is just permanent. So I came upon I was searching online and I came upon the tying of the tubes. So I decided, I think I'm done having kids.
Now, after your second baby?
Yes.
So after your first baby, you were still using the normal contraceptive methods. And those are the ones you're saying you had some challenges with? Because you were using pills mostly?
Pills. I did pills and I was looking for another option. Yes, because the pills were messing with my hormones and So I decided, I got tired of using them. I decided, let me just get something that is going to be permanent, yes.
So you're currently in a relationship and married?
Yes, I'm married for 8 years now.
8 years?
Yes.
So maybe tell us a bit about your husband.
He's supportive. He was supposed to have it done. We talked about it. He was supposed to have it done. And, okay, according to me, he was taking his time. And I was like, I'm not doing this because I was not planning to get pregnant again.
When you say he was supposed to have it done, because I can imagine you've been together for 8 years.
Yes.
So before having kids, what contraception method had you guys elected to use as a couple?
None. And then condoms, and then mostly none. Yes.
Okay. And then now you started having children.
Yes, when I got my firstborn.
After your firstborn, is that when you started feeling like, hey, maybe I need to consider more permanent methods?
Yes.
Right off the bat with the first pregnancy?
With the first pregnancy, I was done.
Okay.
And then I got pregnant and I was like, okay, I'm not doing this again.
And what was your husband's reaction?
He was good. He's a really chill guy. He was like, we talked about it. I was like, he was supposed to have a vasectomy, and he was like, okay, I'll take her. Then when I went when I was with my second pregnancy, I talked to my gyna, and I was like, he was giving me options, and I was like, no, please, let's just, after this pregnancy, I'm done. He refused. He was like, you're young. I was like, no.
How old were you then? Because a thing about the permanent contraception, a lot of the experts will actually hesitate to do it on a young person.
Yes. He
because
kept
they
telling me,
understand-
you're young,
Yeah.
you need to talk to your husband. I was like, but my husband is on board, because he was supposed to have it done. And I was scheduled for
So
a
he was supposed
cesarean.
to have a vasectomy
Yes.
done after the first pregnancy.
Yes, it didn't happen. Then I got pregnant, and I decided
Now
I'll
with
take
the second
the second.
pregnancy.
I'm taking one for the team. Since I
Right.
was having a cesarean, the doctor said it's better, since they're already inside there, to just tie it instead of me healing and then I come back again and have it done. So I just decided, okay, then do it.
So you've said your husband was very supportive.
Yes.
And obviously for him, because you took one for the team.
Yes.
So maybe he's not here today, but I'm just trying to understand, perhaps, might you have a clear picture around why he hesitated, especially with the vasectomy?
I don't think he did, but I kept saying, when are you having it done? He's like, yeah, I will have
So
it
he
done.
just kept postponing
He kept
it.
saying, I will have it done. I was like, no, as
Yeah.
in, you need to give me a date, Then I was like, I got impatient. So when I was having my clinics, I just talked to my gynecologist. I was like, can I have it done?
Right.
He was like, yeah. But he was like, but you're young. I was like, no, I am done. I think I made up my mind. I have 2 kids now. Let me just have it done.
Maybe because we live in a society where, yes, we are in 2021.
Yes.
But primarily in African societies, children are considered to be a blessing, a sign of wealth. And I know that especially for us millennials, most people are choosing to have fewer and fewer children.
Yes.
So, but it's one thing to say I'm choosing to have fewer children, and it's another thing to say that I permanently do not want to have any other children.
Yes.
So what was that deep motivation for you as a woman?
I've already raised one. To me, I was like, I'm done. I had made up my mind. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm always with my kids 24/7. And I was thinking, I'm not doing this again for the 3rd time. So for me, I had already made up my mind, because I already thought about it with my first pregnancy. So I was like, I've been thinking about it. So I finally just decided, let me just do it.
And maybe on a more extended family level, did you guys have these discussions with people around you, and what were their reactions?
Yeah, I had with my mom.
So what was your mom's reaction?
My mom is very supportive, but she was like,
Are you sure?
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Like I get from family
you're
and
33
friends.
now, so
yes.
you did this when you were 32.
Yes, yes. So most people tell me, you'll regret it. Why? Kids are a blessing. I was like, I already have 2 blessings. Like for me, I don't know. I keep explaining to people, like, I'm okay with 2 kids. Yes. So, yeah. So I get a lot of pressure even now. People are like, why did you do it? You have to reverse it. I'm like, okay. Me and my husband talked about it. We agreed.
So as a couple, you're aligned. So you've told us about your family's reaction. What about
Yes.
his family's reaction?
None.
None.
I don't think I've had that conversation with the other
Okay.
family, because by the end of the day, it's my decision and my husband's. So I don't think any other opinion matters.
And just to be, just to throw like a spanner into the works, because I think we were talking about this earlier, and I gave you the example of Neo, who's the international celebrity, whereby in his first marriage, he went through this, and then they separated, and the wife ended up being very bitter. Is that something that perhaps crossed your mind as a woman?
No.
Because you're done. For you, it's a
done.
personal choice that
It was
I'm
a
done
personal
having
choice.
kids.
Yes. If it happens, it happens. Because I hear sometimes when I was reading about it, they say after like a few years, like about 10 years, some tubes might like attach themselves and you might get pregnant. There's a chance. I hear. I'm not so sure. But if it happens, it happens. But at the moment,
So the great part is that we have an expert on the show, so he's just going to be clarifying some of the medical facts for us. But now maybe just to understand your experience. So after doing it, did you experience any changes, like physically to your cycle?
I didn't get any side effects. Like after I did, because I had a cesarean, I bled like for 2 weeks. And then, because the doctor was telling me I will heal, it will heal altogether with the cesarean. So Apart from that, I got over it. I've never received my periods. I've never came back. It's been a year now. I'm still waiting.
So is that something to do with the procedure?
I am not sure.
Okay.
I think I need to go back to my gyna and confirm, because I've never received. But every month I cram.
But you're not complaining about that
I know.
one.
I don't want them back. I just want to know I'm okay. That's
Yeah.
all. But other than that, yes, my periods still waiting. But yeah.
Okay, so we hit the streets just to find out from you what your opinion is on permanent contraceptives. This is what the women had to say. Take a look.
Contraceptives is very important, especially nowadays when you have to plan for a family. But the best one that I found so far is the ones that don't play about with your hormones, such as IUD or the coil. So that's what I'm on right now, and it has worked for me. Other ladies say that the injection is okay, but some of them, they say that they don't have a mens. So for me, the non-hormonal base is the one that does not mess with my flow, but still gives me the contraception I need.
Ile nishaitumia pill na zilikuwa fiti, hizi za 21 days zilikuwa tu poa. So naiza device wale wanaiza taka kuitumia, pill si mbaya, even ingine ya for 3 months pia si mbaya, na hata coil si mbaya. Iko fit according na hormones za mtu.
It's not a bad thing to use contraceptives. I've been on 3. I first used the injection. Then I used the Norplant, that one, the implant, yes. And now I'm on coil, yes. Not bad. In fact, I love the coil, yes. I've used it this is the 4th year, and I just love it, no side effects. If I can compare with the previous ones that I've used, it's flexible. I love it.
Right, so that is what most Kenyans actually think about permanent contraceptive methods. I have with me in studio right now Dr. Kireki Omanwa. He is a consultant obstetrician and gynecologist, and also the president of the Kenya Obstetrician and Gynecologist Society. So Dr. Kireki, welcome to the round table.
Thank you very much for welcoming me to the studio today.
Right, so maybe let's start from the basics. What are contraceptives?
Thank you. Thank you very much for this important question, which people need to understand, and what basically is contraception. Before we even go into what contraception is, I just want to give you a rough idea about what we call uptake. That is the percentage of Kenyan women who actually partake of contraception. And the partake, or the uptake as we call it, is rather average, because it's about 54%. In other countries, it's a lot higher. It can go even up to 90-something%. Now, coming back to your question, what is contraception? Just the word itself, contra and ception, these are two words which have come together. That is against conception. Anything that is used to stop conception taking place, to stop a pregnancy happening. There are very many things that can be used. There are very many methods of contraception. We can divide them very broadly into hormonal and non-hormonal. And then on top of that, we can actually add the permanent methods of contraception. If we start with the hormonal methods of contraception, we also have different methods. The most common one are the oral contraceptive pills. Again, these ones can be divided into the pills which have two hormones, and there is the others which have one hormone. Now, in the oral contraceptive pills, generally is one of the most common methods of contraception. It is generally advised, used in younger women in their reproductive period, and they are not only used for stopping pregnancy, but they can also be used in other situations as well. Now, our guest here has talked about she tried contraceptive pills and they did not work very well for her. Something which we have to remember is that for these pills to be effective, they must be used on an on an everyday basis, meaning if you've decided to go down this way, you have to use it every day at a particular time. If you decide in the morning, then it has to be every day in the morning. If it is in the evening, it has to be in the evening, and so on. So you can't.
So Dr. Kiriaki, the procedure that she chose
Yes.
was the tubal ligation. Maybe you can tell us about that procedure in particular.
Okay, sawa. Let me just finish this. So the tablets are used on an everyday basis. If you miss one tablet or so, then you have to use other methods of protection against getting pregnant. And there are other methods as well of contraception: injection, no plant. You can use uterine contraceptive device, and so on. Coming to our guest here, who decided to have what is called BTL, that is bilateral tubal ligation. This is where the tube is actually either cut completely, a part of the tube is removed, or sometimes we can actually use what you call a clip, and we fix it on the tube, and this sort of crushes the tube and stays there permanently. Now, talking about the decision to come to this method of contraception, permanent method of contraception, usually we suggest this to patients, for example, who've had 3 cesarean sections, 4 cesarean sections, and so on, whereby another cesarean section can actually be detrimental to the health of the patient. It can be done during cesarean section, like she had mentioned, or it can also be done what we call laparoscopically, where we put a camera through the belly button and we hold the tube and put a clip there. Now, when there are different methods of tubal ligation, but the end of it is that tube, a segment of that tube, is either removed or is buried within the uterus, such that no conception is supposed to take place. As we have said, it's a permanent method. Chances of getting pregnant are extremely low, about 0.1%. And if that happens, it means either the tubal ligation was not done properly, or in very, very rare cases, the method that was used was not appropriate.
So, Dr. Ari, when it comes to the tubal ligation, is it reversible?
That's an interesting question. Now, actually, I meet not a very large number of patients who come, just like our guest, and they say, I had tubal ligation when I had 2 children. Maybe financial situation was not very good. We decided to go down the road of the tubal ligation. And now, after several years, things have settled, and maybe we want another child or other children. There is a possibility of actually doing a reversal. But remember, any reversal is surgery as well. So there are chances of, chances of infection, chances of complications, either through injuring the bladder, the bowels, and so on and so forth. So that is something which we have to take into consideration. The other thing that we must take into consideration is that if the tube was cut and there are 2 segments, then we need to actually cut a small piece from either side, remove the scar tissue, and then do what is called anastomosis. Not a very easy thing to do, because remember, what you call the lumen of the tube is also very tiny. So it will need very high skilled method of surgery in order to do a reversal of tubal ligation.
Thank you for that, Dr. Ari. Right now, it's time for a very quick break. Remember, if you have any questions, get on the SMS line on your screen and also on the Switch TV social media handles. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the round table. Now, my next guest is popularly known as DJ Mose. Welcome to the round table.
Thank you.
So today we're discussing permanent contraception methods.
Yeah.
And you have famously been known to have undergone a vasectomy.
Famously.
Yes.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah, I did
So-
actually get a vasectomy. Yeah.
And I'm sure you've had quite different reactions from different people. So maybe just give me the range. And especially men, what do men say to you?
I mean, it's been both the guys who are happy that it had happened and the guys who are like, ah, never, this can never happen
Right.
to me, because the fears that are associated with it.
Yeah.
And I think for Jamaz, we are very I don't know how this is going to come out, but I think for Jamaz, we are very careful when it comes to our private parts.
Certainly.
If you ever
yes.
watch any football game,
Right.
when the Jamaz, if there's a free kick, there's one area we like protected.
Right.
If you're going to get into a fight and someone threatens you, they threaten a certain area.
So with vasectomy, the fear comes from the fact that now you're voluntarily volunteering yourself to go
Yes.
get a snip.
To go get a snip and to allow someone to mess up, with your private parts. And of course, there are guys who feel, this is probably going to mess up with my sexual life. This is going to, it won't be the same. So there are a lot of fears when it comes to a vasectomy. So amongst my boys, first let me say that how I even actually got to that place where I decided to go get a vasectomy. It was actually one of my friends who had gone for it.
And a much older friend or same age as you?
He's actually younger than me by
that's interesting.
yeah, he's actually younger than me by maybe 5 years.
Okay.
So he came and he told me, hey maze boss, juzi maze nilienda. Juzi maze nilienda maze nikapata ka snip.
And what was his motivation?
I think because maybe for him and his wife walikuwa wamefika place wanasema, I think we're okay with the kids that we have. And again, for the same reason that I went, it's also because he wanted his wife to stop using the pill. And so when he shared with me, he told me about the process. I was like, first when he told me about the process he had to go through, I was like, oh man, this looks like such a long process, bana. And but I did appreciate the fact that he would come and talk to me about it. And then actually it was not just him, he went with 2 other guys. So alikuwa amebebana kama mabeshte.
So all 3 of them now did it?
All 3 of them did it.
Okay.
2 of them went to the same clinic. One guy went to a different clinic. And the experiences were both very different.
So it's something that's happening. It's just that maybe it's not spoken about
publicly. I think it's happening, especially because this came from guys who are very close to me.
Right.
At least 2 who are very close to me. And so when he shared with me about it, I was like, actually, this is not a bad idea. Then I started talking about it with my wife. And so...
so let's talk about your personal story, because you've mentioned that for you and your wife, a big part of the reason was mostly because she was having adverse effects to other contraceptive methods.
No, actually, I wouldn't say I can't even speak on her behalf, because I don't know what her body was going through. But it was, I think the challenges that women go through when they keep taking on the pills. But I think for her, she was getting to a place where she was like, this thing is going to mess me up. And so we need to stop it now rather than later. And so we had to look for, what options were there. And I remember when we were having our third born, we have 3 kids, when we were having our third born and basically our last born, Baraka, we sat down with the doctor and basically he shared with us, he was like, okay, if you guys feel that this is, that this is the last baby, these are the options that you have available. And so the options are available for my wife were quite a number.
Right.
Zangu
no one was addressing you.
No one was addressing me, you get. So
you were a spectator in that conversation.
In that conversation, yeah. All I could do was maybe just have the conversation, be like, okay.
So what does this mean for her?
Yes. For me, there were only like 2 options.
And the assumption was that she would be the one who would have to take one for the team.
Yes. As always, and this the crazy thing is, as a society, and maybe not just in Kenya, but all over the world, the woman bears the responsibility for family planning.
Certainly.
You get. So it's more like the woman is the one who's carrying the burden and who's always has to think about, okay, let me take the pill. But then what about Jamaz? Is it really family planning if it's just one person who's bearing that burden? Alafu, when you get to that point where you feel you're not going to have any more kids, why subject your wife or why subject your woman to continue taking the pill when there are other options where you can be able to help her with the burden?
Yeah.
So I think for us, it was getting to the place where, my wife did not want to continue with the pill. And of course, there's the adverse effects that come with that. This thing is just changing her body chemistry every time.
And just listening to you speak, Mose, and I really hope that the men are listening and paying attention, because yes, we're talking about the permanent contraception method that you chose, but what I'm also hearing is that from the onset, you were very involved in the process of family planning with your wife.
Oh,
that
absolutely.
You are acutely aware that this is what she's on. This is probably the effect it has on her body. And I want to ask, how many men take the time? Yeah, like realistically,
they can tell us.
Yeah,
so, and there's a tweet
I don't know,
on
and it's interesting you're saying they can tell us, because I'm gonna hit the streets. Take a look at this. We asked men about family planning and contraceptives, and this is what they had to say.
maoni yangu kama Mkenya, kwangu itakuwa ngumu, kwa sababu itabidi tukae chini na bibi tuone shida iko wapi, sababu kitu inaitwa family planning tunaweza tumia njia mingi. Kuna kitu kama hizo vitu zingine tumesema na wewe, si lazima ni kado hizo vitu, kwa sababu unaweza kado hizo vitu mwisho ilete shida.
Kivyangu hiyo itakuwa ngumu. Juu mimi kwa maoni yangu naonanga hizo ni kama ni vitu specific zimeundwa kwa niaba ya wamama. Juu mwanaume unaweza pata labda bibi yako ameaga dunia na umeoa bibi mwingine na ulikuwa umewekwa hizo vitu, uzazi imeenda chini na ule demu umeoa labda anataka mtoto. So itahapenaje? But bibi kaa wangu mimi naweza aga na yeye akae na wale watoto wako na wao. So kwa wanaume kuna disadvantage. Pia mimi huwa sizai, mimi nazalisha. So bibi yangu naona hiyo ni jukumu lake. So mimi sidhani hiyo ni kitu imeundwa kwa wanaume. Hii inafaa kuwa tu kwa madem wabebe hiyo mzigo.
According to me, siwezi fanya. Cause hiyo nini inaweza kuaffect. Unajua iko na many effects. Like unajua blood, unajua kama hizo. For example, unaweza get kama mimi and you, we are different blood, unaona? For example, me when I do it, for me I know it may be cause things that sikuwa nataka. But for others, it depends on how you are managing your family. You can do it for the family, you know. Yeah. But for me, I can't allow that one. So easy.
Well, contraceptives. What I think about contraceptives is this. Well, it's something good when you really want to plan your family and everything. That's good. But I think that it's more okay and well to do for the ladies compared to the men, because vasectomy, what does vasectomy mean? You see, technically speaking, it's actually the sterilization of this. I think you understand everything. Yeah. But you see, we have side effects with this sterilization and everything, because first and foremost, we have this blood clots in the semen and everything, and then you have this scrotal bruises and everything. It's not, as men, it gives us this discomfort type of thing. And I don't think it's okay for men to do it. But if you really, really want to like take care of your family and, you know, plan your family and everything, you can go ahead and give it a try. But personally, I wouldn't do it. Yeah, I wouldn't do vasectomy. Like, why should I do that? Come on. No.
Okay, so definitely a lesson there. And again, I've said you're very unique. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And probably now, at the point when you were saying you had your third child, was the plan always to have 3 children?
Actually, initially, we thought 2. You know, I had always wanted 2 kids. Even from back in the day before, I think even when I was still a teenager, I always fantasized about having 2 kids. And so, you know, but then when you get married and you get your firstborn, you get your secondborn, and then they had a 2-year difference. But then at some point, we're like, you know, let's try for a third one. And, you know, God blessed us with a third kid. And then we're like, I think this is it. It was very clear, you know, I don't think we want to have any more kids. So that's why maybe it was easy for us to start having those conversations about, tunafungia hii story wapi? So, but we were very, my wife and I have always been open about everything when it comes to contraceptives, when it comes to how many kids do we want. You know, I was there in the labor ward, in the delivery room when my wife was giving birth to all our kids. So just having those conversations, and I'd like to encourage the Jamas. Can I look at that camera?
Yes, sure.
Maybe I just want to encourage all the guys who are out there, you know, be involved in the conversations around your family. You know, talk to your wife, find out what she's going through. You know, is he talking about the kids? How many kids do you guys want? Ndio mkifika mahali where you feel hapa hivi ndio tunataka kutamatisha, you want to close this chapter here, at least you know what options are available for you. But I think it's more of us Jamas coming into that space where we talk about, let's talk about our family together. You know, plan about your family together. It's not the responsibility of your wife, but it's actually the responsibility of you two to be able to talk about these things and see, okay, so tumemaliza, so where next?
Right.
You know,
and
yeah.
You know, it really just makes the conversation easier.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
I think for you, probably the fact that your friends had done it, also there was some level of comfort around the whole thing. But I'm pretty sure also in the beginning, you must have been nervous.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, because again, it's my private parts, and I want to make sure that I'm not going to have second damage.
And since we're having this conversation, again, for educational purposes, maybe just walk me through, what are some of your apprehensions as a man? Because fine, you've made the choice, but as always, there is fear. So what are some of those fears? And be as honest as possible, Moz.
I think the biggest fear,
Yeah.
you know, as any Jamal would, was first, am I going to be messed up? Will I be able to perform again? You know, will I be able to enjoy sex? Am I what's and if I go through this and then my wife gets off the pill, are we going to get pregnant again? You know, so those were genuine fears, just like any Jamal probably would have. And so what happened was I called, I had a random conversation with I called up one of my friends who's a doctor. And I was like, bro, I'm thinking about, so I've talked to my boys, you know, these are just kawaida guys like me. I was like, let me get an expert's opinion. So I called my boy who's a doctor and I was like, okay, Daktari man, this is what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think? And the funny thing was, when I called him, the week before, he had just gone for a vasectomy as
So
well.
he'd done it as well.
He had just
so
done
there's
it.
a trend in this town of ours.
It is happening. I guess it's happening. It's just
But
that
on
guys
the
are not
down
talking
low,
about. Guys are
yeah.
not talking about it. So he talked to me and he was like, Amos, this is who I went to see. It's non-intrusive. So the process is not, you know, set in the shida sana. Actually, nilienda alafu nikatoka, I drove myself home. So
it's a
it
very
gave me a level
easy
of
procedure. If you can drive yourself home.
Absolutely. And when I went for it, again, true to his word, tulimalizia process, I think within 30 minutes we were done.
Was it painful?
No.
So it was just like snip, done, out.
As in, the level of discomfort, if I was to rate it from 1 to 10, was probably like a 3.
Okay, and that's pretty low.
That's pretty low.
Women deal with way worse.
I mean,
childbirth.
so when I was having this conversation with my
Yeah.
wife, after I did, we had these conversations about, you know, better for Kenya. And basically, so I shared with her and I was like, oh, this was the conversations we were having. And when I told her about my level of discomfort, she was like, okay, you think about what we go through when we're
Yeah.
giving birth.
And she's giving birth thrice.
She's giving birth thrice, yeah. So it really can't compare. So my level of discomfort was like, honestly, it was like a 3. However, let me just put a caution out there and tell Jamaz that you want to go to the right person. You want to see the right doctor to do this process. Because if you go to a quack,
Right.
man, yeah.
It could go south. And go
It's
south
just like
very
any
quickly.
other medical procedure. If you go to a quack, yani, things could honestly go wrong.
So you talked about 3 fears. And now that you've done it, and you've done it now for how many years?
It's been 2 years now.
It's been 2 years.
Yeah.
Any regrets?
Nah, none.
Yeah,
None
pretty
whatsoever.
confident?
Absolutely. And, you know, even better was just knowing that my wife does not need to be on the pill again, you know. And so, yeah, it's absolutely no regrets. And, you know, I thank God for the wisdom. Again, I think it's also wise to be able to say that this is not maybe for everyone.
Right.
You know, this is probably not for everyone. However, if you get to that place where you feel that, you know, you do not want any more kids, you know, mefika mahali kwa sababu, you have to look at a couple of factors, you know. Are you financially stable? Do you want any more kids? Are you able to take care of your kids?
Can you invest in those children?
Can you invest in those kids?
Right.
I think when you get to that place and you feel that you want to now make that decision, you know, it's really not a bad thing to do. And maybe I can finish with this one now. You know, my friend, you know, after I went for the vasectomy, I became tight with the Daktari. And, you know, for him, he comes from a polygamous family.
Right.
So his dad had 2 wives. And his dad was not able to take care of the kids. And just the embarrassment, you know, and the difficulty of his childhood and, you know, having to go through this, having to go borrow for school fees,
Right.
you know, go to the neighbor's school.
So his was a personal conviction.
Yeah, he was like, you know, it's not fair for families to do that to their kids. And so maybe for the Jamas who are out there again, do think about these things, you know, don't take kids for granted, you know. Usiende tu maze kumangana kama mambuzi alafu mnatoa tu watoi. You know, but think about the consequences about how are you going to be able to raise up your children. And you need to have these conversations with your wife. Talk to your wife about, you know, what are you going through whenever you take these pills? Because if you don't understand what she's going through, you'll never be able to appreciate it and make the right informed decision for your family. Cindy?
Certainly.
Yeah.
And maybe just to go back to what your 3 fears were.
Uh-huh.
So now, after the fact,
Yeah.
maybe tell us what the reality was. Because you say the first one was like, will it affect my performance?
Yeah.
So
Like, tuko sawa tu.
everything
Here
is
you go, everything
tip-top.
is fine.
Okay.
Everything is fine.
And then
Nope.
the second fear was...
The second fear was, you know, are we going to have kids? You know, clearly 2 years later, tuko sawa bado.
Right.
Hakuna shida hapo hivyo. And then the third one was, will it affect my, I guess it's attached to the first one because I was wondering, you know, kama nitaweza perform, which I guess comes with erections and things
Right.
like that. Nothing was affected.
Right.
Yeah. And the good thing again, where I went, it was non-intrusive. You know, it was just local, what do you call it? Local anesthesia. Sindio, so haina shida, you know, it's you know, put in a, you don't have to lala to see what's happening. Actually, the doctor talks you through the process about what's happening.
Maybe because you're a media personality.
Yeah.
And certainly you've been very vocal about this. Why?
It's about family planning. And the responsibility or the burden of family planning has been left to the woman. You know, you have to be the ones who are taking the pill. You're the ones who have to think about taking that, what do you call it, the kapach?
Right.
You know,
there's so many. There's the IUD, like there's so many. The diaphragm, we could get into it.
Absolutely. Right. And you know, many of these things some of them are even very intrusive.
And they have side effects.
And they have side effects. So what's my role as a man? You know, what's my role as a husband? You know, being in this relationship with my wife. You know, so I think it's important that we as men also rise up to that place and say, okay, how do we help ease this burden? You know, is this burden the responsibility of the woman alone? It shouldn't be, because it's about family planning. It's about family. It's not woman planning, you know. And so how do we come together and
like that.
make
It's not woman planning.
Yeah. So how do we make sure that we are bearing this burden one together? Alafu, you know, the funny thing is they had tried coming up, and I'm glad that you're going to have doctors, you know, having conversations about this. They tried to come up with a pill for Jamas to take.
Yeah.
But the adverse effects, they were like, this is too crazy.
But women deal with this.
You guys have to deal with it.
On a basically weekly, monthly cycle.
Absolutely. So I think, Yani, if we Jamas do not want to go through it, why should we let our women go through it?
Certainly.
Yeah.
And maybe on that note, I want to ask you who's watching from home, let me know, if you're a man watching, is this something that you would consider? Yes? No? Why? Get on that SMS line right now. So earlier on, I told you I had Dr. Kireki on. Dr. Kireki is a consultant obstetrician and gynecologist. So Dr. Kireki, you've listened to DJ Moses' story. And I love the fact that he's literally like, I think at this point you're a walking billboard.
You know, the funniest thing,
yes.
Until I went for this Manel with my friends Akina DNG and Akina Mariga and Peter Ngure, you know, and we had conversations about the same, you know. And since, I guess, last week I was talking to my friend from Kenya, and he was like, hey, Mose, something has happened on the internet.
A lot.
I was like, what happened?
Yeah.
So I just Googled, and then there were all these articles.
Now you're the vasectomy guy.
You know, but it's fine.
It's
fine.
I'm
more than glad to talk about it.
That's why we're having this real talk.
Yeah.
So maybe, Dr. Kireki, in your opinion, what are the statistics around men choosing to have vasectomies in Kenya? Because listening to Mose, you would think that it's quite popular right now.
Thank you. I've been listening to DJ here, and what he's done is something fantastic. But unfortunately, the uptake for vasectomy is extremely low, about 1%. There's a time when we had actually a whole week of trying to get guys to come and have this vasectomy done. But the uptake was horribly. We could actually see maybe one or two gentlemen coming for a vasectomy a day. So men are still very skeptical about this. As DJ Mo says, our private part is our private part. We don't want anybody to interfere in that area completely. So it is not something which is very common. Actually, it's very uncommon that a man will go for a vasectomy and will actually go on air and say, you know, guys, I actually did have this snip.
Right. And maybe just on that, Dr. Kireki, just some interesting facts for our viewers. New Zealand is actually one of the countries with the highest rates of men choosing to have vasectomies. And 44% of men in New Zealand between the ages of 40 to 74 years old have chosen to have vasectomies. This goes higher for men between 40 to 49 years. That is 57% of men. So you can see that really, probably in Kenya, it's not as popular. And that's why we're having this discussion, guys. Know your options. So right now, I want to invite Dr. James Ecole. He's a consultant urologist. So Dr. Ecole, probably you'll be able to tell us a bit more around what really is a vasectomy. Because, you know, when Mose and I were talking, we were saying snip, snip here. But I want to understand, from a medical point of view, what is the procedure actually, Dr. Ecole?
So what a vasectomy basically does is disconnect the tube that transmits sperm from the testis to the urethra. It's a relatively simple procedure to do, like DJ Mose has said, and done under local anesthesia. But of course, there can be some complications not done well.
So we have our expert, Dr. Kireki, with us. And Dr. Kireki, what I would want you probably to explain is basically what is a vasectomy? Like, what is the procedure? Because you had, when Moz and I were speaking, really the perception out there is that it's almost like it's castration because of the snip element. Thank you.
We would like to demystify this vasectomy. Generally, in order for a woman to get pregnant, a man has to deposit sperm in the woman's vagina. Now, sperm is produced in the testicles, and in order for it to get to the woman's vagina, it has to pass through a pipe, and this pipe comes again into another pipe, which now what we call the urethra, and now this comes out as an ejaculate. Now, a vasectomy is basically a very simple procedure, usually done under local anesthetic. By local, it means that we give a little bit of that medication to the area where we are going to go through, and then we pick up this pipe, which is very straightforward, under qualified hands, and then we make a cut through it, and that is it. The procedure may take about 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes on the outside, but in the hands of a professional, very good professional, that we may take even 15, 20 minutes. As I emphasize, as even DJ Mo emphasized, is that it has to be done by a professional, somebody who is qualified, knows what he's doing. If it is done by somebody who does not know what he's doing, it can have complications. For example, you may have blood, blood forming in the scrotum, what you call a hematoma. You can have an infection, and so on and so forth. So it is not castration. Castration would be to remove the testicles where the sperms are produced. This is basically cutting the tubes where the sperm pass through. Thank you.
Right. And so maybe just also find out, can it be reversed?
Reversal, technically it is possible, but remember these tubes are very tiny, so the issue of reversing sometimes is not very successful. I have seen a few cases who have had a reversal with the intent of having a baby naturally, but then it wasn't very good. They had to go through what is called IVF, and we had to get sperm from the testicles themselves. So reversal technically can be done, but the effect may not be very good.
And maybe just to demystify some myths around this, does it perhaps come with a risk of predisposition to things like prostate cancer?
No. This is something completely different. It has nothing to do with prostate cancer at all. So this is a simple procedure. We cut the pipe and you continue functioning normally. You can actually, and you do have an ejaculate. The only thing is that there is no sperm in the ejaculate. So the chances of you having a baby are very, very low. Almost zero if it was done well.
Okay, and how much does this procedure cost? If you could give us at least some ballpark figures.
Difficult to tell you straight away, because it will depend from doctor to doctor. Most of the time it's urologists who do this, but any other doctor who is well trained can also do it. It will depend on the hospital where it is being done, and so on, the medications and so on. But usually it's about maybe 50,000, 60,000, just a ballpark figure, plus or minus a few shillings here and there.
Moz, is that the ballpark figure?
I think as Daktari has clearly said, it depends mahali unaenda. So it's like a restaurant pia. Unajua unaweza enda
Yes, unaweza kula chipo ya 50 bob, unaweza kula chipo ya 1000.
Na zote ni chipo. So it depends, know. I think for me I paid 20K.
Wow. Yeah, okay, I think you've just now.
There you go.
There it goes. Like you said, it depends where you're going, know, and different doctors' charges have different rates, and it's absolutely understandable because, again, Pia, different clinics have been set up differently. So, yangu ilikuwa ni 20K.
Uko sure si influencer brand ambassador?
Kuna kitu kama hiyo by the way, because I've never even talked about where I went to, apart from my way akinipatia discount as a shukuru sana. And ilikuwa, like he said, it was very easy, straightforward, and I'm glad that this guy has done it for 10 years.
Yeah.
And he talks you through the process, and yeah, and I'm very happy it cost 20K and I see 50K.
Okay, so if you want to find out the details around where Mo's had his done,
hit me up
on Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah, at Mo's DJ.
Right. Daktari, maybe because we focused on permanent contraception methods, but I also believe that, like you say, the uptake on this in Kenya right now is pretty low, both for the women and for the men. Yes. So very briefly, if you could just give us a refresher course on some of the more common and safer contraception methods that the ordinary family can consider.
Thank you. Let me start with the men, because DJ Mo here is talking about vasectomy. Unfortunately for the men, we have very, very few, and that is basically because of the physiology, how our body works, and the production of sperm, where we produce millions of sperm, unlike the women who produce 1 egg per month, and it's a lot easier in terms of physiology to control that. So for the men, for contraception, we basically have, using a condom if it is acceptable with you. Permanent methods like the one we have talked about. There is another method which is called, withdrawal. It's basically not a method, because just before ejaculation, there is some fluid which comes out of the male organ, and that fluid can actually have sperm as well. So in the male area, we are very, very limited. In the female area, we have a wide range of these methods. We can talk about oral contraceptive pills. We can talk about an injection, which is used once or even once a month or once every 3 months. There are intrauterine contraceptive devices. They're the normal ones, or there are others where it is loaded with hormones. We have a diaphragm which is inserted, and it goes and covers the cervix, call it the female condom, as it were. We have what we call like a plaster, where you can put on your shoulder or wherever it is. We have a wide array of these methods, and even in the female side, we also have what we call natural in quotes, whereby the woman has to observe the vaginal discharge, but this has to be done over a long period of time before she can ascertain that on a certain day, between a certain day and a certain day, there is ovulation. Talk about withdrawal method as well. In women, doesn't work very well in most couples. Failure rate is about 98%.
Wow. Failure rate is 98%.
98%. So it's really not a method, even though some quotas actually use that as a method. There is another new method called Nuvaring, relatively new in this part of the world, has been in operation, has been used in other countries, in the more developed countries in Europe, where a lady inserts a ring into the vagina. It goes and rests on the cervix, and this is done once every 3 weeks. So we have quite a wide array. I didn't mention the implant, the one which we insert on the hand, and which can be used for even up to 5 years. So we have quite a number of methods when it comes to women.
So, Daktari, I want you to speak on 2 things. You mentioned pills. I think a while back, there was actually a concern raised that, particularly with young women, there was an abuse of the emergency pills. Maybe you could speak to that and what the risks around that abuse are.
It's a very valid and very, very important question that you've asked. In the pills, as I said, the oral contraceptive pills, you use them once a day, every day for 28 days. Then you have a break. You can have a break and then start again, and so on. The issue of the so-called emergency pills. They were actually designed for emergencies, meaning that if you went to a party and you forgot about whether you were safe or unsafe, and you had intercourse, and in the morning when you wake up is when you realize you actually had intercourse and you are not sure about where you are in your cycle, and the chances of getting pregnant are quite high and you don't want to do that, then you can get this pill which has a much higher dose of hormones than the normal contraceptive pills. And as the name itself denotes, is an emergency. The problem is having this emergency every second day or every third day or every week. So it's a misuse and abuse of these contraceptive pills. And unfortunately, later on, if they are not used judiciously, they will lead to issues with the normal cycle, cycle in a woman. You may have periods which are all over the place, or even sometimes you have no periods at all. So I would like to caution the ladies to be very careful when they use these pills.
Right, and also because, again, we want to educate as much as possible. We've talked about permanent contraception methods, and I want you to talk about that and STIs, because there's the assumption now that because you cannot reproduce, that you can now have a blank check and do what you want when you want.
Yes.
But again, there's always the risk of STI. So probably just link up how some of these methods may not necessarily protect you from STIs.
Actually, when you look at the history of oral contraceptive pills, when they were started being manufactured, when they were discovered, in quotes, in the 50s, late 50s and early 60s, it gave women the liberty, in quotes as well, because previously women were supposed to be, you know, very prim. You don't you don't have sexual intercourse unless you are, you know, you're married, and so on and so forth. Now, with the advent of the pills, when they could control actually their chances of getting pregnant, sexual liberation, let's call it that way, took place. So women could have intercourse and without the risk or without the fear of getting pregnant, or rather this fear was reduced to a minimum. Now, unfortunately, with that, other issues, you know, came up, because then ladies could have intercourse with, you know, whichever number of partners they had, and you know, and so on. So this brings in or brought in other issues altogether, especially issues of sexually transmitted diseases, sexually transmitted infections like gonorrhea, like syphilis, and not to mention chlamydia, which is one of the biggest silent, you know, silent killer, if you can use that. And then obviously there is HIV as well, and so on and so on, herpes, and so on. So with that advent, and the men most of the time not wanting to use condoms, because somebody said, why should I eat a sweet which is in its package? I have to remove the package so that I can eat it well. So this led to a propagation and an increase in the number of sexually transmitted diseases, which we have noted.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Daktari. As always, pleasure to have you on this show. DJ Mo, thank you so much for coming on the table.
Thank you.
And sharing your story.
Thank you.
I'm expecting your DM should be very vibrant for the next couple of weeks. And as always, thank you so much for choosing to stay with us. I really do hope that I've earned the privilege of your time. That's it from me, Tamima. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing.
Thank you.